Ladies and gentlemen, hey yo, beautiful fellas, beautiful people, fellas out there today. Monday slate, 2-game slate, $1.5 million in prizes today for this Monday slate. 2-game slate because of the COVID stuff. Let's not waste your time. Let's jump right into it because I think this slate it's relatively easy. I think it's relatively straightforward. It's a Monday slate, so not as much information will be going out as if it was a Sunday slate with all the news, or even a Thursday slate. So ownership in general won't be that live. So let's get into it right now. I will be live an hour before the game starts up until lock. So be sure to be there or be square, and you could be there by hitting the subscribe button. That being said, let's slide into the quarterbacks. Now, there's a disclaimer here that the quarterback situation in Cleveland, because of the COVID stuff and them getting pushed back and them being the reason why they got pushed back and the Raiders being pissed off and all that stuff, kabish kabosh, here we are on Monday. I don't even care who the quarterback is for Cleveland. The only way I'm even going to be somewhat interested is if it's a cheap one. So if Baker Mayfield ends up playing, it doesn't look like Case Keenum can, since he ended up testing positive on the list on Friday. So if Nick Mullins is the quarterback at $4,800, he's like the only way I'm even interested in these guys. Baker, if he plays at a more expensive price tag, not interested. But at the end of the day, there's really one quarterback I want to play on this slate. We don't have to waste that much time at quarterback. Yeah, Kirk Cousins has the best team total. A 25.25 team implied total is the highest on the slate by 3 points. It is 7 points higher than Fields and Carr, who are the other startable quarterbacks, in my opinion, who have experience this year. Now, by the way, Nick Mullins is nowhere near a third-string quarterback in the NFL. On most teams, he'd be a backup, and honestly, there's a chance he could be a starting quarterback in another time this year. I don't think it's a high chance. It would have to be probably paired back up with Kyle Shanahan, but he had him as an efficient quarterback. So, like, what do we got? Up top, you got Kirk Cousins, who's playing well this year, right? You really can't say too many bad things about Kirk Cousins. If you want to just look at it, 275 yards per game. He's number one in big-time throw rate this year per PFF. He's facing a Chicago defense that stinks. Bottom 5 secondary, bottom 10 pass rush this year, and he's going to throw a lot. So Kirk Cousins is in play. The problem is he's 6,800, and you're going to see we have a lot of stud running backs and a stud receiver on this slate that I'm prioritizing over Kirk Cousins. And by the way, I have all my projections up for this slate for the Tuesday Millionaire Maker on a fucking Tuesday. Yes, hello. I have those all up on Patreon, and you should definitely reference them, especially the ownership projections. Check them out down below. Come join the community. But right now, I have Kirk Cousins as the second highest projected quarterback. Not even the highest projected, even though he's the highest priced. And my second highest projected is not my highest projected is not Derek Carr. I'm not really interested in Derek Carr right now. He's struggling. Waller's already ruled out. Since Henry Ruggs is gone, he's really struggling lately. Yeah, he has 6 games over 300 yards this year, but only one since week 7. And it's really been slowly going downhill since then. They're playing at slower paces. They're relying on Josh Jacobs more since he's been back. Cleveland actually has a good pass rush with guys on that defensive line. Myles Garrett has been socially distancing himself from the team for like a week now, doing individual drills so he can be ready for this game. Potential defensive candidate of the year, Myles Garrett. So I'm kind of off of Derek Carr as well. The guy that I want to play is Justin Fields. Justin Fields is my highest projected player at the quarterback position on the slate, and he's $1,500 cheaper than Cousins. He's $900 cheaper than Carr. You get a very good discount off of Justin Fields for sure. The man is averaging 54 rushing yards per game his last 6 games, which is only making him even more secure of a play, and he has the best matchup on the slate in terms of fantasy points to the position and what Minnesota is allowing to that position, and just in general against this secondary so far. He only has 3 games over 200 yards this season, so there's kind of, and really the last time out against the Packers, the screenplay to Grant was kind of a fluke to get him over 300 yards, but I'm not concerned about the 300 yards. I'm fine for him to have a 200-yard game and have 60, 70 rushing yards, get in the ground, get in the end zone on the ground potentially as well. And on this small slate, yeah, I think that's all that we're going to need. So Justin Fields is the clear standout option for me. If I had to rank a second player, it would just be punting down to Nick Mullins so you can save money. My whole priority and my whole goal on this slate is to save money for the running backs that we're about to get into and to save money for the wide receivers. And as we finish up with Justin Fields and transition into the running backs, if limited time offer, it's going to be ending over the next couple of days. If you use the code CLASS like you're in school, CLASS on PricePicks.com, you get a free bet up to $100 and my free NFL DFS course. It's 10 plus hours of game theory strategies, how to actually start winning money and framing your mindset, getting rid of your emotions to win money in DFS. What actually matters, take out all the fluff. That is a course that is $100 normally. It's going to be free. I've never done that before. Free. We're going to try and pair up with PricePicks here these next couple of days. A holiday special. Santa Sal is here for all you beautiful people. But I take Justin Fields over 15 fantasy points as I have him for 17.7 fantasy points and a little bit of a prequel or a spoiler or prerequisite. I don't even know the word I'm looking for right now. It's like 7 a.m. on a Sunday before the main slate even starts. But I'm going to be going KJ Osborne under 11 fantasy points. If Adam Thielen plays, I definitely like the under here. Even if Thielen doesn't play, this is kind of a number where we can still hit the under. So we're trying to get ahead of the curve with that Thielen news a little bit at this point. But either way, I like it. You pair those two together, you win some dollar riskies. You use the code CLASS and you get a free bet up to $100 and my DFS course sent to you. Just wait. It'll be in your inbox shortly after you deposit. So thank you. And the reason I'm so adamant about paying down at quarterback, and really just it's a good play, Justin Fields in general, but it's because of the running backs in this slate. The number one priority on this slate is Dalvin Cook, and he's not cheap. He's $8,500, but he is by far and away the number one priority on the slate for me. I have Dalvin Cook currently in my projections, projecting out for 23.5 fantasy points. That is 8 points more than anybody else on the slate, right? On a 2-game slate, when somebody projects out for 8 points more than anybody else on the slate, they are a priority just by the definition of that alone. Alexander Mattison has to miss this game. He's on the COVID list, and he cannot return because he is not vaccinated. So what you're going to get is Alexander Mattison not in there. A rookie in Kenny Ngannou, who's a dynamic player, but not really somebody they trust in pass protection. So it's going to be the Dalvin Cook show. I don't think we ever question that. He has an 80% opportunity share. He gets the number 26 run defense right now of Chicago. Week 14, he came in hurt, quote unquote hurt, and played a season high, tied a season high 81% of the snaps while he was hurt, leading to 30 opportunities. Cook is the priority. And now Nick Chubb is next up here. He is my second highest projected running back, but this range of Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs, and David Montgomery, the starting running backs are the only guys in play on the slate. I'm not getting cute with it. I'm not getting cute with Dearness Johnson's 5 touches. I'm not getting cute with Jalen Richard maybe seeing 4 opportunities. I'm not getting cute with Kenny Ngannou's 3 touches as a backup, or Demetric Felton, who's going to operate as like this wide receiver running back hybrid, but the number 3 running back on the team. Maybe takes on the slot role Felton. If you were to punt anybody, it would be Felton because he has a chance to take on the slot role with Landry not seeming like he's going to return in this game. But Anthony Schwartz cleared the concussion protocol, so the Cleveland wide receivers should be Peoples-Jones, Schwartz on the outside, and now Rashad Higgins in the slot. So that kind of hurts his upside. I'm just sticking with the starters. I'm not getting cute here. We have value to be found that is less than $4,000, which is the flat minimum for a running back, less than that all across the board at the wide receiver position. So I'm locking and loading my lineup with Dalvin Cook and then 1 to 2 of these other running backs after that. And the reason I say Nick Chubb is, well, he's a favorite in this game, so that bodes well, 3.5 point favorite. He has the second highest team implied total. You would assume, especially if Baker is out, even if Baker's in, but you would assume whoever the quarterback is for Cleveland, they're going to run this ball with Nick Chubb. They're going to prioritize it. Kareem Hunt is on the COVID list. He is out for this game. Yes, Nick Chubb's offensive line is dealing with some COVID stuff, and hopefully some of them can get back as now his top 3 offensive linemen, whether it's for injuries for the season like Jack Conklin or 2 guys in Wyatt Teller and Willis who are on the COVID list. Yes, those are concerns for sure, but I'm trying to factor this all in to say that Nick Chubb in a good matchup here, I think, is probably going to come in here and at minimum touch the ball 20 times in this game, which is only even more upside for Nick Chubb. Games without Kareem Hunt as of late, you're getting the full workload for Chubb. He's seeing his routes run increase 6, 8, and 12 in the last 3 games without Kareem Hunt, and I think that's only going to go up even more. So I like Nick Chubb more because I think Nick Chubb comes in lower owned. The problem is just the price tags. Can you actually afford Chubb and Cook? Is that the optimal way to play? We'll have to see, but there's a lot of ways to punt down at not only quarterback we talked about, but receiver and tight end. Between Jacobs and Montgomery, I mean, they're a $400 difference. I have them both projecting out for within 0.3, not even a 0.3 fantasy points of each other. So kind of just whichever one you really want to get to at that point. The smaller underdog will be Josh Jacobs. He's obviously been seeing a really nice pass catching role. I do think there's a chance that changes a little bit with Jalen Richard potentially returning for this game. He missed week 14 due to COVID. He's on track to play in week 15, but what you're getting right now out of Josh Jacobs is just a really, really secure floor. I mean, 74% of the snaps in 3 straight games after not topping 70% all year. He has 5 or more receptions, 5 or more for Josh Jacobs in 4 of his last 5 games, averaging close to 30 routes run per game over those last 3 games over that time. His biggest concern is that his offensive line, they're underdogs in this one, and they rank 31st in run blocking against a top 10 Cleveland run defense. So it's kind of a coin flip. It'll come down to ownership that you can see on Patreon for me between Jacobs and Montgomery. Montgomery's a little bit cheaper, allows you to leave more money on the table if you opted to. Montgomery comes into this game with just a built-in better opportunity share. Yes, Damian Williams and Khalil Herbert are behind him, but even then he still ended up seeing all the touches in this previous week. He's been seeing a top 3 opportunity share in the season. Saw 81% of the opportunities with Damian Williams back. Yeah, and 7 targets on 32 routes. Decent matchup here. So I think that those guys are probably the closest in the NFL, came out in the same draft. Josh Jacobs and Montgomery to what their roles are right now. They're like 80% of the backfield guys. They're just seeing receptions out of necessity, not really great pass catching running backs. So it'll be an ownership thing for me, but Montgomery at least allows you to leave money on the table. But I'm just not getting cute anywhere else. Running back is not the spot to get cute. You can somewhat get cute, right? Mad cute, hashtag Ariel Hawani and Logan Paul at the Jake Paul fight. Vicious knockout. I mean, just unreal shit. But wide receiver is where you can start to get somewhat cute when you get to the paydown options because so many of these dudes are 4K or below just naturally. So I said that Dalvin Cook was the priority at $8,500. Well, his teammate Justin Jefferson would be the second priority, but they're both $8,500. So it's really hard to get to both of them. But that being said, we have punt minimum priced receivers and tight ends that are strongly in play. So Jefferson would be my second priority on the slate. I think you just go to Justin Fields because he's cheap. I think you just put in Dalvin Cook and you start to fit the rest of your lineup around that. Adam Thielen right now is trending to potentially be a game time decision. We don't know the full status there yet. So Justin Jefferson, I don't have to tell you much about him. He should have probably had 40 fantasy points if in his last game, if in prime time, if he wasn't missed like 4 or 5 times on Thursday night by Kirk Cousins. But yeah, Jefferson is just what he is, a walking 20-point guy in 4 of his last 5 games. He's a number 1 receiver in deep targets and air yards, which just leads to a lot of upside. And oh yeah, now a matchup where his maybe the best wide receiver in the league, Devontae Adams, number 2, I think, is Justin Jefferson. He now is a matchup where Adams in last week alone just went for 10 catches, $120 and 2 tuds. Thielen, just wait on the status there. Not really a guy I want to get to. I think that it's fine to play Hunter Renfrow. I think that he's very secure. I think that it's an interesting decision this week. Do you go to Hunter Renfrow, or you just save like $1,000 and get different on a 2-game slate with Darnell Mooney? Do you go to the running backs in the flex and just avoid Hunter Renfrow? Obviously, Hunter Renfrow is the main thing here. There's still no Darren Waller. So Renfrow, everything looks good. The only thing to point you off of it would just to be pulling the ownership card and leverage, which I do think is legit. But he has 100+ yards. He is that dude the last 3 games with 100+ yards. In week 14, he had 14 targets, only 9 targets for the rest of the receivers on his team. And since Waller has been out these last 3 games, 11 targets per game, 30 receptions, 351 yards, he's just absolutely popping off. He is strongly in play. It just depends on the rest of your lineup. Like, I'm not against just going down to Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney with Allen Robinson on the COVID list. Darnell Mooney in a good matchup against Minnesota where their team is going to have to throw. You can pair him up in a stack with Justin Fields. I'm not against going to Darnell Mooney, who I should actually put on here as a yes. Darnell Mooney, and leave $1,000 on the table, or maybe spend that $1,000 up on a defense or a tight end. But honestly, on a 2-game slate, I'm fine to play it somewhat like a showdown. Leave money on the table if you don't think you're suffering too much of a projection. And right now I have Hunter Renfrow coming in for 16.5 fantasy points, Darnell Mooney in the 13-point range. So it is a decent difference in projection of 3 fantasy points, but I do think it leads to a situation where Renfrow on a 2-game slate is going to be, I don't know, maybe we'll see the ownership projections when they come in, but over 50% owned, whereas Mooney maybe comes in the 30% range, and that starts to look really good. So for a leverage situation, I want to just pay up at running backs, get the secure touches and opportunities there, and then maybe this is where you start to get a little bit different at wide receiver. I think Mooney's going to be a decent leverage play. We scroll down. We already talked about KJ Osborne. I'm taking the under there, and the reason I'm taking it under is more of a strategy thing. If Adam Thielen plays, I definitely love the under. If Adam Thielen doesn't play, the under is still strongly in play. If he doesn't have the deep touchdown late in the game last week, he's hitting that under by far at 11 fantasy points. But I think either way, we're getting some nice leverage there. I think if Thielen is out, yes, he's in play in DFS. If Thielen is in, I'm not really there at this price point. Osborne has just been fine, right? He had 9 targets last week, 3 catches, 83 yards. He now has 19 targets over his last 3 games, with Thielen basically being out 2 weeks ago right off the bat. So he's fine. He's going to see volume. He'll probably see 7 targets in this game. Not many of them are downfield. There are a lot of short, intermediate crossing routes. At this price tag, it just looks okay. I'm still going to lean the under. The guy that I like the most in this range, and I think other people will too, so it might be a situation where it could easily be a bad play. Like Donovan Peoples-Jones attached to a 3rd string or a backup cornerback, or even Baker with a separated shoulder for the Browns, at anything over moderate ownership is not a good play. So if Donovan Peoples-Jones, we're hoping he comes in low owned, because yeah, he's a big outside threat, but he's kind of a home run hitter, and they're down receivers. I'm expecting Landry not to play. If that news changes by the time you're watching this, of course, well, then Peoples-Jones looks a little bit worse. I didn't mention Landry. He looks a little bit better. He becomes an even better leverage play because it's not injury related. It's just COVID list. Landry would become a better leverage play, or maybe a very similar leverage play in that range to you get in a Darnell Mooney and a Landry, and now you're getting a little bit different at receiver. But when you look at this right now with Donovan Peoples-Jones, yeah, he's a home run hitter. He's got like 2 Hail Marys on the year that are really inflating his stats, but he's starting to see all the snaps. Like, this dude is not leaving the field, so that's the nice thing to see, right? Like 34 routes run last week. The 2 previous weeks to that, 33 and 33 routes. He's playing 85% of the snaps recently. Coming off of his most, I would say, consistent game, 5 catches, 90 yards on 7 targets, like one that just didn't take an 80-yard Hail Mary to actually pad his stats on 3 targets. So he's seeing more volume. The concern now is that you just have a backup quarterback in there who maybe starts to target the tight ends a little bit more, the middle of the field a little bit more. So that's your main concern. But in this range, the guy who stands out the most is just like an athletic freak, a monster, a guy who has home run hitting upside is Peoples-Jones. Jakeem Grant. So this is the thing with Chicago. Not only is Allen Robinson on the COVID list, Marquise Goodwin is now doubtful. So you're going to see 3 wide receiver sets. If those guys indeed miss, you're going to see 3 wide receiver sets of Mooney and Damiere Byrd on the outside, with probably Jakeem Grant in the slot a good amount. Jakeem Grant, he's a special teams guy. You saw him in primetime have a punt return. You saw him take a little push pass to the end zone on a screen. I don't think any of that is consistent or repeatable. So the production is not that great. If any ownership comes in on him, I'll definitely avoid Jakeem Grant. I'm actually just going to fade him at this point. Could be extreme, but I think they prefer Komet in the middle of the field. Deshaun Jackson, and this is the range of just like throw your hands in the air like you just don't care. This is just you're filling out your lineup. You just put the guy who you think you got a good feel for. Like Deshaun Jackson is still running as the wide receiver 4 out there. You're going to get 20 routes. Does he hit the Thanksgiving Day home run upside? Zay Jones is probably the most secure role out of any of these. He is attached to a decent quarterback, right? In Derek Carr. I would say a good quarterback quarterback. Zay Jones at $3,500 continues to be on the field nonstop for Las Vegas. So I think that Zay Jones, if you're choosing between the Grant, Jackson, Zay Jones, Bird, and Brian Edwards range, I'll go to Zay Jones, who ran 40 routes and saw 6 targets last week alone. Now has 5+ targets in 3 straight games, running 28 or more routes in 4 of his last 5. So if you're choosing in this range, I think that's where I would lean the most. But the reason I said it, you can see all these $3,000 options that allow you to pay up at running back, maybe even allow you to get Jefferson and a pay up running back. But if you scroll down, this is the reason why this slate is interesting. Anthony Schwartz is questionable. I have him on here as a yes, but as of Saturday, he practiced and he cleared the concussion protocol. So I just assume that means he's going to play if he cleared protocol. But rookie Anthony Schwartz should be on the outside in this game, Peoples-Jones on the other outside, and Rashad Higgins in the slot. I prefer Rashad Higgins in the slot a lot more for anybody. Baker Mayfield loves him if Baker's able to clear COVID, and if not, these backup quarterbacks, I expect to prioritize the guy in the slot. So I think Rashad Higgins, the veteran out there, he was a healthy scratch a couple weeks back. He ended up playing last week. He ran like 20 routes. Anthony Schwartz, the rookie, should be on the outside. He's a burner. He's not dealing with a lower body injury. It was a concussion. So Schwartz and Higgins, I prefer Higgins. Higgins being $3,000 flat opens up a lot for you. Like if you put Fields into your lineup, a defense, and Higgins, now you're automatically starting with a lot of money to fill in the rest of the pieces, especially if you start to play around with like a mid-range Mooney at $5,500. So I think that Higgins and or Anthony Schwartz, I'm fine playing both of them because they're so cheap. Probably not if it's a backup quarterback, but Higgins I think is probably, like, Dalvin Cook is the best play in the slate because of how high he projects. Justin Fields is just like a plug and play because there's not many quarterbacks and he has mobile upside and a good projection. At the receiver position, like Cook at running back, Fields at quarterback. At the receiver position, I think it's Higgins that is the guy you prioritize. Yeah, Jefferson looks good, but he's expensive. I think Higgins is the guy you prioritize at the bottom. We can close it up now at the tight end position. I appreciate you all tuning in. There will be more content throughout the week for the Tuesday Millionaire Maker slate. That'll be dropping on Tuesday morning. We'll be live for this Monday slate, live for that Tuesday slate. Wednesday a slate, a video for Thursday Night Football. Thursday a video for Saturday Football. Friday a video, and I'm going to be traveling on Wednesday morning, leaving for the weekend. So there's not going to be live streams on Saturday and Sunday, but we'll be covering all those slates. I'm going to try and get them all out in time. So just keep that in mind if for some reason guys are ruled out, things along those lines. But for this, we'll be good. We'll be live for this stream. So I appreciate it if you have 2 seconds of your time to hit the subscribe button here. It might pop up, all that type of stuff, because I really do appreciate it. If this is your first time finding me, let me know in the comments as well. Very curious on that. So we finished it up at the tight end position. And this is the thing with tight end. Like, yeah, if you want to go to Conklin and like all these tight ends look very similar. The guys who stand out are the Cleveland guys. Cleveland's dealing with a lot of injuries. Tight ends will be relied upon even more if there's not a starting quarterback in there, just because it's shorter passes. You don't have to rely on your arm on the outside. There's a reason why backup quarterbacks are backup quarterbacks. They don't usually hit consistently outside throws. So, and you factor in Landry in the slot is on the COVID list. Austin Hooper is on the COVID list. If we assume those guys are both out, these tight ends for Cleveland just look really good. So David Njoku, who is a former first-round pick, who is already trending in the right direction. He's already cleared. He's ready to play. He's over his injury. He's off the COVID list. Actually, he didn't have an injury. He was just on the COVID list the previous week. He's off that list now. He was already trending in the right direction. 60, 64, 73% of the snaps his last 3 games. Ended up seeing in those games 4 targets, 5 targets. And now the former first-rounder out of Miami, who's an athletic absolute freak, might be the full-on starter here. So he's my highest projected tight end at 3,600. He is the priority if there's no Austin Hooper and or no Landry. If Landry plays, he's still a strong play. If Hooper plays, it starts to become a little bit worse at that price tag. But Conklin and Moreu are fine. Conklin's just hard to get to, especially if Thielen plays, but they're fine to go to at the highest team total. You should expect some volume there. Foster Moreu, or I know I'm pronouncing the name wrong. It's somewhat of an inside joke at this point. At a very similar price tag to Njoku, expect lower ownership, expect leverage play there. So he actually is going to be a yes for me because in GPPs, David Njoku is definitely going to soak up all the ownership in this range if these Cleveland guys stay out. So that's where Foster, who is an athletic player in his own right, and a guy who has been struggling the last couple of weeks when he's had this full-time role, even though it's a small sample and people probably got burnt by him. I actually think that he's a really good leverage if you can find that extra 200. Cole Kmet definitely remains in play, especially with no Allen Robinson or Goodwin out there. They continue to lean on him, so expect 5 targets somewhere around there. And then the final guy is just Harrison Bryant. If you're looking to punt yet again, you can punt with another Cleveland player. Harrison Bryant, if there's no Austin Hooper, he is dealing with an ankle sprain. He is trending to play. Just track that news. At 2,500, he's a fine punt. I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. He's a talented kid in his own right. There's a really good chance you get the 4-catch, 40-yard, and hope for a touchdown game out of a $2,500 tight end. Can you go double tight end this week? I think you can, but I think you're leaving a lot on the table with how there's 4 really stud and secure opportunity share running backs on the slate. I think this is the week where you lean to go 3 running backs. It looks pretty obvious there, but you can do it. I mean, you have cheap tight ends, $3,000 and $2,000 range tight ends, a cheap quarterback, and so many cheap receivers, like 6 to 7 $3,000 range receivers, and even more in the 4K range. So this is a pretty easy slate to break down. I mean, putting the pieces together is where you want to go to, but I prioritize probably Rashad Higgins, Dalvin Cook, Justin Fields, and then I go from there on how to get leverage on the slate. You can get leverage by looking at projections versus ownership projections, and we have those on Patreon down below if you want to check them out. We'll be covering all the slates this week. I appreciate you all beautiful people tuning in. Again, use the code CLASS, CLASS, to get a free bet up to $100 and my DFS NFL course for free. It's limited time. These next few days only for a holiday special. We're teaming up with PricePicks for that. So thank you for beautiful people for tuning in. If you didn't notice, I already got the championship belt over here. So thank you for tuning in. I'll see you all in the next one. I'll see you when I see you. Take care and brush your hair.